Okay, the goals here are going to be how a timeline works. So going over BC versus AD, BCE versus CE, and then comparing both of those pairs to each other and how they kind of interact. Giving context clues for a map, or at least how to read context clues for a map, like reading dates, arrows in terms of directions, because when students are faced with map questions on quizzes, tests, or standardized tests, oftentimes what I find is those map questions are giving them the answer on the map. But some of them don't exactly know how to interpret the map once they get to me. So one thing that I like to try to focus on is making sure that they're able to use all of those context clues to be able to answer the questions to the best of their ability. Then we're going to find some maps showing early human migration, and then make NEARPOD questions that focus on helping students work through maps. So kind of like some guiding questions as we go along. So the content that they need to know for this little miniature early human migration map lesson is where early humans emerged, where early humans migrated, and why early humans migrated. For example, food, shelter, sometimes climate, but largely it's going to be focused on pursuing food sources, or at least making sure that they always have adequate food sources. So like when we go over the Paleolithic era, we really kind of hammer in the idea that these early human nomads were hunters and gatherers. So we focus on those two primary modes of getting food, hunting food, so like wild animals, and then gathering food from the vegetation that already exists. And then later on, we contrast that with farming for the Neolithic era. But one important thing to note when we actually get to that, and one thing I want to at least introduce here before we get to the Paleolithic era, is that once these early humans exhaust the food sources that are where they are currently residing or currently staying, they have to move on and find new food sources. So if they've already hunted all those animals, or if they've already picked all that vegetation, whether it's like naturally growing fruits, vegetables, berries, all that kind of stuff, they have to go somewhere else to get it. So that's going to be really important right here. So those are going to be the three big pieces of content that they need, in addition to some of these other skills that we're going to develop here in this lesson. So one of the first places I want to check in terms of finding good maps showing early human migration is just going to be this list right here. So there are a couple ones I think that might be good. So I'm going to check this one first because it looks like it was posted a couple times. Map of early human migrations based on the out of Africa theory. Figures are in thousands of years ago. KYA. I've seen that before. I can't remember what it means off the top of my head. Let's see what that is. Pretty sure it doesn't have anything to do with Avatar. Non-SI abbreviation for 1,000 years ago. Okay, here. So 1,000 years ago, abbreviation before present. Kilo years ago. Okay, that actually makes sense. Okay, so it's kind of like a kilometer or a kilowatt. So instead of saying maybe 1,000 years ago, 1 KYA. That's actually kind of interesting. So helpful. Okay, in thousands of years ago. So 200,000 years ago over here in like Middle Eastern Africa, and then moving over through the rest of Africa, it looks like getting towards Northern Africa around 100,000 years ago. Okay, and this pretty much checks out with some of the other maps that I've used in lessons in previous years. So these dates are pretty much in line with that. One thing that, and students always mention this when I show them several different maps in succession, they always mention that some of the numbers are maybe a little bit off or a little bit different or might be conflicting a little bit. And the way that I try to answer, and this may not be the best answer, but I think what is probably important to address there is that since there are a lot of different archaeological finds and there has been a lot of like DNA analysis and just a lot of investigation from all different fields in terms of either unearthing bodies that had been found in different parts of the world and being able to date them back to a certain period of time. There is a pretty good guesstimate that we can make that is around this ballpark. It may not be exact years. Some bodies still are unearthed over time. So I guess that kind of lends itself to maybe a little bit of discrepancy. But for the most part, all of these maps that you would find for early human migration, they pretty much are in the same general ballpark in terms of years. So like some maps would have maybe 200,000 years ago in Eastern Africa. Some that I've seen had maybe like 1,500 or 2,500. I think the most I had seen was like 400,000 years ago. And I'm pretty sure those are mainly going after Homo sapiens, not just, like any form of life. So this one is a good maybe. We're going to keep that in the maybe pile. Let's see, early human migration map. Okay, that's a pretty simple one. Quality's not the best, but maybe we can see if we can find another one. Map showing early human movement out of Africa. Okay, that's the exact same one that we looked at the first one. Migration patterns of early humans. All right. I'm pretty sure I've seen this one before. Oh, this isn't years. It's showing the same directions and everything, like Eastern Africa, moving out through the rest of Africa, Western Africa, Northern Africa, Southern Africa, but then moving into the Middle East, Europe, Asia, going across into Oceania, going across here into the Americas, and then down into South America. But what are those? So it looks like chromosome markers and is that mtDNA markers. So this looks like it's less, well, I guess it does say thousands of years ago. Oh, okay, so 100,000 years ago for that mtDNA marker. And then like 35,000 years ago for this Y chromosome marker. That's pretty interesting, actually. So they're maybe not labeling the actual, are they? Yeah, maybe not labeling the actual years on the map itself, but when you take this, like M242, and you find it over here, so that would be about 20,000 years ago. That actually is pretty interesting. I wonder if that might be something that would be good to go over with them, just so that they would be able to develop skills about seeing a map that they have no idea what's going on, because I guarantee that like a middle or high school student who sees LLY22 or M173 is going to have no idea what that means. I didn't have any idea what it meant before I looked at this. And then we can work through the puzzle of, okay, well, how do you use the map key to interpret what this map means? So that would actually probably be really useful. Okay, so I'm glad this person put that up there. Okay, early human migration from Africa to all corners of the world. Ooh, this is good. It just looks a little too complicated. Maybe it's a little too much overstimulation. Okay, that looks like the same one as this. We don't need the Middle Ages. What is this one? Evolution of human density. Individuals per 100 kilometers squared. Oh, so it's talking about like population density. Okay. These maps are based on results from a numerical human dispersal model, which is forced by spatio-temporal estimates of climate and sea level changes over the past 125,000 years. So if we like compare this to, I guess some of these other ones, like Eastern Africa, mostly Eastern Africa being like the oldest period of time for the people that we're looking at. Then over here, Eastern Africa. Now this one says 125. So KA would be, if we go back here, KA is pretty much the same thing as KYA, kilo years ago, 1,000 years ago. So 125,000 years ago, it looks like it's maybe covering a little bit more ground than the 200,000 years ago from here, but it's pretty much the same sort of idea. And then moving out throughout Africa into like all across Central Africa, and then mostly like central and southern and a little bit of like northern Africa and the Middle East over here. And then over time, okay, this is pretty cool. Something else that looks really interesting is how the colors for individuals per 100 kilometers squared, the colors are changing to reflect the increase in population density over time. So it's not just that people are filling out different parts of Africa here, but also they're becoming more populous because since, you know, they've been there and they've been staying there, the population is going to increase over there. And then you start to see other areas become red as well, or at least go from like purple to blue to green to yellow to orange to red. This is a really interesting map. Maybe I could put that in there too. And we could just talk about like the process of how to read that, because that is a lot when you first look at it, if you were not expecting it. And I was definitely, yeah, that was weird. Okay, so I think we found some interesting maps. So let's save these. And I'll see if NEARPOD's Google search has any other ones that we might want to use. All right, so we're going to start off with an open-ended question. And we're going to use the image, and I'm going to do a basic one. I think this one is a good basic one to start with. Yeah. Okay, so Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthals, Homo erectus. We're going to talk maybe a little bit about the differences between these, but probably not spend a whole lot of time on that, because the main idea that, or the main ideas that they really need are just these central concepts. So an open-ended question, maybe describe what you see about early human migration. Maybe not what you see. Describe what the map shows about early human migration. That way it kind of leaves it pretty open-ended and up to them to give their own reflection on what they notice. And when I get those responses, we can just talk about some of the ones that seem the most interesting, or where they kind of hit the nail on the head. And maybe if somebody had something that I hadn't thought of, and they had like a cool question, or they were wondering a little bit more, we can address that as we go forward. Okay. So let's try this top one now. So this one was KYA. Oh, cool. Thanks. Let's actually, before we do that, what I want to do is do a collaborate board. What does KYA mean in terms of years? Because what's probably going to happen is they're going to run into the same problem I did here, where I Googled KYA and they're going to see Avatar Wiki, and that's not exactly where I want to direct them to go. So I think I have to give them a little bit of a direction here. What does KYA mean in terms of years? And some people will probably find it a lot faster than others, and as soon as people start responding in the collaborate board, then other people are going to say, oh, okay, cool. And then from there, once we build that understanding, then we can move on to this map question. So it's kind of like a step ladder. We have to start at the very first foundational step before we can really address the map itself. So maybe I'll do a couple different guided questions here. So based on the, based on the map, 1, where does it, no, I'm not going to stop that. When did, okay, I'm going to put this. I'm going to put around when did early humans migrate to North America? That's probably the most recognizable continent to a lot of them, maybe. And this map could also give us an opportunity to address how maps are generally situated. Like you would have North America and South America on the left over here, and then you would have Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia on the right. But this kind of flips that model. And then we could talk about how, Earth being a globe, if you just rotate it a little bit, you can get this view of it, and it gives us kind of a different perspective. I think it would be hard for students to visualize early human migration if the North and South American continents were to the left of all of this, because it would be hard for them to see like this connection between super far Eastern Asia and super far Western North America over here, where you had the it's either Beringia or the Bering Land Bridge. It's been a while since I've gone over this. So yeah, I think this would give us a good opportunity to do that. But anyway, North America, I think, is the most easily recognizable continent for a lot of them. So around when did early humans migrate to North America? Number 2, let's see. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that yet. That could be another question. Number 1. Which happened, or what color on the map key represents the year farthest back? Farthest, hang on. Farthest physical distance, furthest non-physical. Okay, so furthest back, because this is not a physical thing. So the year furthest back. And ideally, they would always say, okay, well, that's 150,000 years ago, so red. That would probably be red. And then I can go to number 2, around what year did early humans migrate to North America? Then I can go to what area of the world does it look like early human? I'm not going to get there yet because I have a different activity that I want to use for that. You know what? No, let's go ahead and do that. What area of the world does it look like early humans first migrated from? Okay, and ideally they would say, okay, well, all of the arrows are coming from 200. And then why do you know based on the map? And when they answer that, why do you know that based on the map? They'll probably either give the answer because, that's the furthest back year, or that's the color, or that's where all of the arrows are coming from. So I want to see what reasons they all have for that. Okay, so those look like pretty good questions. Next, what I want to do, let me see what this one is. Okay, not going to get there quite yet. I'm going to do a draw it activity. And no, here. I'm going to use this map, the one that we just looked at. That's going to be our background. So that's what they can draw on. And I'm going to say, using the draw tool, trace the migrations of early humans across the world. So they would circle the place where you begin. Okay. So two things. Circle the place where you begin, so they would probably circle right here. And then, ideally, sometimes some of them take the shortcut, but ideally they would trace over most, if not all, of these arrows, kind of showing the different directions that are being taken. Some of them use the same color throughout the entire map. Some of them, change the color as they get to different parts of the map. Okay, so here's where we can develop some other map skill questions. I'm going to do this one that had the Y chromosome and the MT DNA? Yeah. And I'm going to give them that map, and I'm going to ask them, what questions do you have about this map? So hopefully, what questions do you have about this map? Why is it hard to read? Why is it hard to read? So if I already tell them that it's hard to read, hopefully some of the ones that look at it and say, whoa, I have no idea what's going on, hopefully they realize, hey, I'm not the only one, and then they don't shut down. Then they start to investigate, like, well, actually, yeah, why does it not make a whole lot of sense to me? So when they see like all of these different letters and numbers that definitely aren't years, we can go over what this map key means, and hopefully we can all work through together how that relates to the map itself and how we can use this map key to read the map. Even though it looks on its face like something that should make sense, it really doesn't. At least not to them. Okay, here's another one. I'm going to do pretty much the same thing with this one. This series of maps. Maybe. Uh-oh. Okay, cool. So, what questions do you have about this set of maps? And I'm going to ask several questions. So one, what questions do you have about this set of maps? Why might it be difficult to tell what's going on? And there was another good question I think I had in mind for just a second. What information can you tell from this so far? And this will give me, number 3, hopefully it'll give me a pretty good indication of like what can they already figure out on their own? Can they use any inference? Can they, kind of piece it together? And that would hopefully be helpful in terms of me knowing what all I still have left to walk them through. Okay, so those are 4 good maps. Let me see if there are any on here that I can check out. Early human migration map. Largely going to be like the same thing. You know what? I think we'll leave it. I think 4 maps is pretty good, and a 5th one will probably just be too much of the exact same thing. Okay, so where early humans emerged, and we would talk about like Eastern Africa. Where early humans migrated, we would talk about all throughout the world, but it would take time for them to get there. So migration routes, we would talk about the different dates where they would probably end up being there in certain parts of the world. Okay, so context clues for a map, reading dates, arrows. I think we pretty much went over that. How a timeline works. That's going to be a good one. Let me find a good picture. Timeline. Ooh, these are tiny. Okay, let me just use Google. So I'm trying to find a good image to kind of explain some stuff. Okay, timeline for kids, but that doesn't go far back. So in an ancient world history class like this, we need a timeline that has both BC and AD in it. So let me just do BC, AD, timeline. Okay, this one's all right. Okay, these are pretty decent. Oh, I like this one. Okay. Because it addresses both at the same time. So we're going to save this one. It's not going to be the only one we use. Oh, yes, I forgot. What I usually like to do is ask them, what does BC mean? Just do blue. And then right after that, let me do that before the map stuff. Okay, what does BC mean? And then right after that, what does AD mean? Because every time I get into that line of questioning, like pretty much everybody knows, at least the students that I've ever had, they all know BC before Christ. But then when we get into AD, it's like, and I'm wildly guessing here, but it feels like about 60% or like 70% maybe think that AD is after death. And then we talk about what it actually means, that Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. So we kind of base it on, like this Western sense of time. And then from there we go to BCE and CE. So here, let me make a slide. Okay, so BC, before Christ. Make it huge. Okay. And then AD, is it Anno? Let me make sure I'm spelling that right. Yeah, okay. Okay, so common, so no, old timeline terms, because we can talk about how largely historians and society at large has kind of transitioned away from BC and AD. Usually I just use these two because that's what they're already familiar with. That's the terminology that they've been used to using. And then over time we start to kind of, use them interchangeably, BC, BCE, AD, CE, because I've seen a lot of different quiz, test, textbook, review game, even standardized questions that refer to both sets of terms sometimes on the same test. And it is kind of weird, but have to prepare them for both, I guess. So old timeline terms, and then we're going to go over open-ended question. Yeah, we're going to go over the kind of new amended timeline terms. So before Christ, BCE, Anno Domini, Common Era. Let's see. Yeah. So I think maybe a good question here would just be, what is this timeline? No, what is the information on this timeline saying? And it leaves it open-ended enough that they can get different interpretations, then we can kind of talk about what their interpretations are. So then I can go over this and say 4 elements. Oh, good. And do the same thing here. BCE, before Common Era. And then C, Common Era. Okay. So we can kind of relate those. Now, I also want to do kind of like a practice thing. So let's see. Is there a good, maybe blank timeline? Blank timeline with dates. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. This timeline, we're going to use it as a question. So we're going to say, if this was a timeline, would you say it is a timeline of BC or AD? Okay, hang on. 1, BC or AD. And then 2, BCE or CE. That way they have to, do both sets, I guess. Okay. And in a lesson that I've done that was kind of like this, I found a few historical timelines, like of actual events and civilizations. There was one that I do remember using. Was it the Persian Wars? Okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So, Greco-Persian Wars, 499 to 479 BCE. Oh, wait a minute. No, I don't want it to outright explicitly state it. Well, I guess I can't avoid that, can I? Okay, here's what I'm going to do. No, not a web page. Okay, never mind. Because I can't do that one. It's a textbook. Wow, these ones are not great quality. I won't be able to answer it if they can't read it. Okay, you know what? Alexander's Conquest map. This should have dates on it. No, I want a date range. Peloponnesian War. Okay, let me see. No, it's just one single date. I need a date range. don't want one with extra questions. Interesting. Here we go. Okay. We're just going to do this. So the goal here is to have them look at this map, and I'm going to ask them, did the Peloponnesian War happen before the year 0 or after the year 0? And that can be question number 1. Question number 2, how do you know? So they could either know because, they see the BC, or because they see it counting down. And that can be, if we haven't addressed it already, which sometimes it kind of slips as we're going through other topics. Then we can talk about how an easy way to recognize BC or BCE is that the timeline counts down, almost like negative numbers approaching 0. BC and BCE counts down towards the year 0. And then once you get to AD/CE, you start counting up. Like, for example, this is the year 2021, and next year is going to be the year 2022. Okay. How do you know that? Oh, after that. Is there another one that we could do? Major historical war map. Oh, what's another conflict we talk about? Do the 100 Years' War, but that might be too complicated of a date range. Mauryan Empire map, maybe. Actually, you know what? This could be perfect. Maybe one set year isn't that bad. Because if I can do that, I can ask them the same question. Let's just do this one, yeah. The same question. Was this before or after the year 0? Maybe that's what I was going for. Okay. Okay. Did the Mauryan Empire exist before the year 0 or after the year 0? How do you know? And then they would take a look at the map and say, oh, okay, well, 250 BCE has to be before the year 0. So this can give us some practice with these newfound newfound map skills. And then we can move into I need to rearrange this. Okay. Yeah, then we can move on into the maps of early human migration. So how a timeline works, we have that. Context clues for a map, like reading dates, arrows, even, we already did it. I'm just going to put it in here for my own sake. Map key. Find maps to show early human migration, make NEARPOD questions that focus on helping students work through maps, at least these maps. Then we went over where early humans emerged, where early humans migrated. We didn't really address this here, but we're going to address it when we go over the Paleolithic era. And we hit that so hard when we go over the Paleolithic era that I guess it doesn't really need to be covered here. And the reason why we go over it so hard once we get to the Old Stone Age is we go over all the different characteristics, like these early humans were nomads, meaning they kind of moved around from place to place. They didn't really have permanent settlements. And then we go over why they were nomads. Well, they had to constantly move in search of food. Well, why couldn't they stay in one place? So then we talk later about the difference between the Paleolithic era and the Neolithic era, and go over how the Neolithic era is defined by the beginning of agriculture and farming, so that now they actually can stay in one place. They don't have to chase animal herds. They don't have to migrate in search of new food once they've exhausted their sources. Now they can just stay in one place. So we'll go over this in later sections. So I guess I can go ahead and take that out. So it looks like we achieved all of the goals here for this one. And I think even though it's a relatively simple lesson, and like it's not super complicated, but I think it's going to do the job that I want it to do. And I think students are going to get out of it what they should probably get out of this lesson. So thanks for watching.